Thanks for staying with us. You're watching Daybreak. Remember, 22422 is the SMS line and the hashtag is Daybreak. I'm seeing your feedback. I'll get to it shortly. But if you turn to the front page of the Standard, bishops dash to save last of Uhuru Ruto ties. Catholic bishops yesterday offered to mediate and salvage what is left of the president and his deputy's broken relationship, saying their differences don't augur well for the nation. We also know that they asked the political class not to even think of changing the election date as the country draws closer and closer to the 9th of August 2022. And remember, the Anglican Church also over the weekend recently banned politicians on stage. This one, I think I'll start with Dr. Alfred Mutua on that one, get his feedback. What are your thoughts on a church that now seems willing to bite more than they have been barking, so to speak?
You know, let me start by acknowledging that when I was slightly younger, I watched a movie called Cry Freedom with Denzel Washington. It was the life of a gentleman known as Bantu Steve Biko, who was celebrating his, the day he was murdered, which was 12th September, just last week. And I grew up listening and reading books and the things that Bantu Steve Biko used to talk about. And he used to talk about freedom and how the people of South Africa needed to be free. But he went further than that. It was not just freedom to be free to rule yourselves, but also freedom of the mind. And the quote I like that he said that the most potent weapon of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. When we talk about Steve Biko and you look at the current situation in Kenya and the politics of Kenya, it's all about mind control and about making people believe that they have to be moving in a certain way. If you listen to all these so-called big leaders speaking about their people, they say, I'm speaking for the poor, for example. You say you're speaking for the poor. I would be very scared of somebody who is just saying they speak only for the poor. Because when they take over power, they'll make sure you remain poor because you voted for them as you are poor. Because you get smart, you get more money, you become wiser. So they want you to remain as poor. The problem we are facing here between Uhuru and Ruto is that this was a marriage of convenience. It wasn't a marriage by people who really wanted to change this country. There was the whole issue of the ICC, and they came in with a sympathy vote to say, let's get together. We've been accused of killing each other. Let's front a new Kenya. But their policies are very different. I've had a chance to speak with Uhuru Kenyatta. I've had a chance to speak with Ruto and others, and even leaders who know them well. And you ask them what happened. What is the rift? What happened? And it's basically ideological. One thinks that the other one is a thief. The other one thinks the other one is too controlling, is also a thief through other ways. And so
they both told you that? Those are
no, they didn't tell me that. I'm just saying this is a perception that we've been able to gather from interaction. And you can even follow, if you're an analyst, analyze things. You can follow the way people speak and the way people organize their thoughts and the way they set up. And you can tell the trajectory. So the Catholic bishops are trying something good. Yes, they want peace and everything. And but is this union good for this country? In a way, if we can have a cessation of this really hot, debate and hostilities that may lead Kenyans to kill each other, it is good. But it should not just be a union because people just want to get together, whereas they are not ideologically together. The truth be told is this: Kenya was aflame after, before the handshake. When Raila Odinga, we were unstable. The stock exchange was going. I'm a person who loves, the issues of people getting money in their pockets. And I was looking at the growth of the business community. We were doing badly. The shilling was weakening. We couldn't borrow money. People were tense. When Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga shook hands at the entrance of Harambee House, there was a cessation of that kind of hostility, and Kenya came and became calm. Maybe this is what the bishops are thinking about, so that Kenya can be calm, so that when they vote for me as the president in 2022, they are voting for the best option, not because people have taken sides, God willing, because that is what is important. Now, the issue of speaking, can I talk about also speaking in churches?
Yes, briefly, please, before...
Brilliant. I want, first of all, to invite the Archbishop of the Anglican Church to visit me at the White House in Machakos. Nataka kumpatia chai na tukule kanyama pamoja na tuongee, because it was a brilliant move for what he did. And Bishop, I welcome you. I commended the Catholic Church when they also said no speaking in church if you're a politician. You know, when I was running for election, my opposers were saying, huyu mtu aendangi kanisa, huyu mtu atumoni harambee ya kanisa, huyu mtu, because for me, I'm such a strong Christian that for me, my relationship with God is about me and God. It is not about showing. I'll go to church somewhere people don't know me, and I'll sit at the back because I've gone there to worship God. I've not gone there to sit at the front as a politician. My relationship with God is between me and God and the church. I'll go and see my pastor and we will pray. It is a private function between me and God. Here politicians use the church to be able to control the poor, to be seen at huyu ni mtu wa Mungu pale mbele, na yeye ni mwizi, yeye ni muuaji, yeye ni mkora, yeye ni ule mtu mbaya kabisa, anajifanya ni Mkristo, anaenda anaombewa, anafanya nini, anapeleka pesa kwa kanisa ambayo ameiba, you know. So when you go to church, go to church as a Christian and don't sit in front. Next time you'll see me going to a church function, I'll not sit in front. When you enter those gates, when you enter that entrance of the church, you are just like everybody else. You are like everybody else.
I wonder if
and we've taken a lot from them. You know, we should learn from our brothers in the Muslim faith. Ukiingia msikiti unaacha viatu hapo nje, unaingia ukalishi mbele, where you find space is where you'll kneel down, is where you'll bow, is where you'll pray and worship from. And this is the problem. So I welcome this move that politicians should not speak in church. Kama unataka watu wakusikize, go hold your own meeting. You know, in a COVID-free environment, si kwenda kanisa. So I'm very, very pleased, and it's something that we need to push now. Evangelical churches, will they follow suit?
Briefly.
Because they have been bribed. You know, let me tell you the truth.
Well,
pastors are bribed.
Very strong.
No, it's true. I know, I've had experience. You know,
we have a lawyer in studio.
Yeah, they're being bribed in a market where you go. These politicians go, and I know they go. They are after the service. They go kidogo, wanaona pastor, wanamwachia shilingi 100,000 hii, fanya kitu kidogo hapa, hii kitu kidogo. Harambee ikipeanwa, kuna ile harambee inapeanwa kwa kanisa na kuna ile inapewa pastor. Unaona mtu anatoa 1 million, kanisa alipigia Mungu makofi, pastor amepewa yake 200 kando ya kumwezesha kufanya kazi ya Mungu. This happens, and I'm saying the truth, and I know, I have seen it with my own eyes. I have witnessed it over and over again. And so my evangelicals, and they are very strong Christians out there, it may not be all churches, tuache kuiba na kupewa pesa ya wizi. Tuachane nayo. Tuache kupatia hawa watu wa siasa kazi ya Yesu. Yesu ndio alisema ukisimama ubiri unahubiri mambo ya Yesu. So I get very passionate about this.
I want to hear more from you, but I need to allow the other. You have really surprised your good senator there this morning. Senator, come in. I don't know where you want to start. Maybe you start with the church's discussion, because
I could start with I could start with the mediation.
The mediation, yes.
Sure.
You're from the Jubilee Party, so
sure.
that's something you're.
And I think I also want to congratulate the bishops. It's a good gesture. It is an acknowledgement that something needs to be fixed to ensure that we have continuity. And so when you hear them speak, then you know that there's a big concern, and I agree that there has to be intervention. What would need to say is that it's going to take some good effort, which I believe is a good thing to do, because we have to remember, I think part of the reasons why we are is because we have a separation of two ideals, and I think it is important to be candid about it. You see, the difference between the two, the president and the deputy, can be simply read as the two have different targets. One targets a legacy, whereby he is going to have to live a state and a country in the way he wants it, and deliver on our agenda. And the other one, as a matter of progression in life, wants to become president when the other one is living. And that is the contestation of ideas and ideals and drive. And definitely that is what would cause and has caused the differences. And so getting in between there and bridging that chasm cannot be an easy task in my view. But I want to congratulate the bishops and tell them, it's worth the trial, and it is worth the effort, so that we can have one country. The question would be then, and if you look at the front page of The Nation, you may want to ask yourself, then where will these other guys who have been down there be sitting? Because they're the biggest problem, if you ask me. You see these fellows called hardliners.
One of them, according to the Daily Nation, is here in studio. He's sitting across from you.
He'll be telling us when he gets to his turn. But I think, Wahiga, that is the third problem, because we have got all these guys who call themselves hardliners around all leading, candidates, especially the top candidates, and they kind of make life difficult, in my view, because you find that most of them are not necessarily driven by what is good for the country. They are driven by survival, self-survival. I mean, self-preservation. Because somebody will be asking themselves, where am I going to be? And they think that as long as Wamatangi has won, I'll find a place. And so I'm beginning to be in this flight, sitting in first class, when Wamatangi has become president. You get what I mean? And so they will do anything around me, to make sure that they will abuse, they will threaten, they will backstab, they will even lie, and they will even cause conflict, including political conflict, as long as they know that this is going to get my man to where he's supposed to be, and we can survive and we can find places. And so I think also a decision must be made by the top leadership, those big shots from top all the way down, to decide how do you chart your course and where do you place the fellows around you. So that's one. Then number two is on then the church, and that's what my good friend here was talking about, my running mate, for that matter.
You actually have almost matched uniform this morning.
No, we're in sync.
You are in sync.
And the ideology.
We have a lot in common. But let me just say a few things about that quickly, Wahiga. First, it's a good thing, again, from the church. It was long overdue, if you ask me, way long overdue. Because the lines were crossed a long time ago, and it was no longer possible to distinguish one from the other, a political rally and a church gathering or a church service. And I'm an ardent Christian myself. I have invested my life, around the church, and I run a foundation, Wahiga, for purposes of disclosure, where I have partnered with the church immensely. I have about 44 classes that I teach free of charge, and they're all domiciled in churches in Kiambu. I have so many other projects that run around the churches. We have had a good partnership, but I'm also concerned, and I have been concerned. Needless to say that I realize, where the relationship must get to where I will have to respect the church and separate my political ambitions. And this is where we've had it wrong. Higa, because facts are facts. We would also want to say, frankly, to our bishops, all of them, including the ACK bishop, because he archbishop, because he said it and he stood firm, and all the other bishops and the Catholic ones, that also in this venture, they also need to look at what history says. Because, Wahiga, can we be frank about it and say that it is almost an uphill task that would be impossible, because church and political leadership are almost inseparable. I'll tell you why. I mean, really, do you know you can argue comfortably that the Christian faith itself, and indeed religion, is based on either of the two. It is that's the theory and the theme. I mean, look at the story of Moses is the story about liberating the church, liberating and fighting with the political leadership to get them off the hands of Pharaoh. I mean, the whole story of Jesus himself, and this is maybe whereby you'd be talking about where the story of Moses, the church won because the children arrived in Canaan. But in the story of Jesus, politicians managed to kill him, in Pontius Pilate. I mean, it's a history from the time when the Pope ruled.
What, they're inseparable.
I mean, from the time when the Pope ruled Europe to the days of the Baganda Kingdom in Uganda, where about the stories about the martyrs of Uganda, to the stories of Kipsang Muge, Alexander of Kenya, when he was killed, to the stories of Reverend Joya being clobbered, I mean, it's a long story, one down, the other one up. What we'll just be saying is as simple as this, that I think to the extent that at this time politicians have crossed the line And when they go to church, they have made the church lose the color, you know, the grace the church had. Because, you know, when a politician steps on the podium there, you know, and or the pulpit and starts talking about wale watu wa makofia, wale watu wa nini, whatever, and then the other one comes and, you know, says, oh, sasa tutaendelea na hii, sasa tutaendelea, you know, the other one comes. I mean, church ceases to be what it has been. And so I believe that was necessary.
Okay.
Lastly,
yes,
you know, it was almost getting to everybody's mind to believe that the church can be compromised. And that was my problem. And that is why I want to congratulate the bishops and say this is timely for this time. But the only thing they've managed to do, and this I would need to say, is they've managed to tighten the valve at this time, but they cannot plug it. It's not possible.
Okay.
The subject is the same. Our people, the people are the same. I mean, they come to me, they talk to my children, but we meet at home. And I'm a politician. So they'll give the Holy Communion to my wife in church, and they'll baptize my children, but my children will come to me, and I'm a politician in the evening. We are the same. So at the end of the day, it has got to be a balance that will have to be, you know, well nurtured, and eventually it is when we get the discipline as politicians to know that when you go to church, this is what you can say, this is what you can do. And then definitely, then we can both find, you know, a way of coexisting properly.
Thank you. I'll ask you to hold there. Honorable Mbui, I'm coming to you because I need you to respond to this Daily Nation headline. But Dunstan, I haven't heard your voice for a bit. For an advocate, that's usually not a good sign.
Yes.
Coming to you on this, the Catholic bishops want to mediate between the president and his deputy. Did the writers of the 2010 Constitution envision something like this? Were they naive to believe that there would be a harmonious relationship between the two players?
Thank you, Wahiga, for acknowledging that it's only lawyers who have, their voices have been plucked out that keep quiet. Serious lawyers must talk. We talk. One, the question about President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, William Ruto, is totally in a different legal and constitutional context from what it was during Kibaki, President Moi and Kenyatta 1. Mheshimiwa Mbao and all these politicians are saying the deputy president needs to be directed, needs to be subservient to his boss. The constitutional provision that brings the position of the deputy president seems up to date. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his handlers and the chief whips here have not understood the context under which a deputy president serves, under which a cabinet secretary serves. The loyalty between the deputy president and the president is not part of the constitutional framing. The constitutional framing is two people present yourselves to my villagers in Nyamira, they vote for both of you.
Jointly.
Jointly. You cannot sack one, you cannot disengage from another. That is what Wahiga Kenyan said. But the president and his handlers are still longing that old time when the deputy becomes a sycophant. When CDF Waheshimiwas are saying that people, the mode of being appointed or elected to be a CDF member or committee is through an election, is to remove arbitrariness, a patronage, and overbearing on people who are supposed to work, not because of your discretion, but because of what the law provides. So, I wish the bishops the best to do, but principally, they cannot achieve because the constitutional provision does not support William Ruto being ejected. Neither does it support President Uhuru Kenyatta sacking him. My take could be, the chief whip has wished me to be one of the, when he becomes a president, he might appoint me to to a very senior position. I'll decline it because after that, you'll tell me, sign this thing, is illegal, then I'm arrested and taken to charge. But that is on a light note. Where we are, the church is in a very tight spot on how to deal with President Uhuru Kenyatta and how to deal with William Ruto. In between, there is Baba. The question is, William Ruto has focused on presidency.
Why are you leaving the other?
I'm coming there.
Who've declared
in
between, party leader?
In between, there is Baba. The president is torn between which elephant is more fierce, William Ruto or Baba. Then under those two people, my good friend has been named here as a hardliner. Formations of government worldwide, let not people tarnish these people's names that they are hardliners. They are strategists to propel their candidate to get power. And just like lawyers who defend our clients, these are defending their principal client, who is the paying master, to get power. You can never see, Wahiga, if you have not taken a position in politics, being appointed as CS. You can never see the Solicitor General, as my good friend says. You must have taken a serious political risk. So these people are justified to front their candidate. How the public sees them, they are not paid by you. They are paid by their principles. The moment they acquire power, then they will lie to us that they acquired power on our behalf. That is politics. So I encourage him to completely fight for his boss, Kalonzo, who is the only one who the DCI has cleared, because the DCI has only one certificate of fingerprint. But there is one generated, not known under law, to give politicians. I don't know. We might be going to court to challenge that clearance, whether it is known under the police standing orders.
Boo, you've been dubbed a hardliner this morning. Do you accept that title?
Oh, I think I think he's an excellent lawyer. Because he's already defended us, so I don't need to defend myself. Thank you very much. You're
doing a good job.
Now, on the issue of what the bishops are doing to reconcile the two top leaders, I think it's a very noble thing. Incidentally, the stability of the nation and the image of the nation is really important for international business. And when the two top leaders are warring continuously, I mean, that is likely to discourage investors from coming to this country. So I think it's a noble process. Whether they'll succeed, I think, is a story for another day. On the matter of church and politics, I want to say this, Wahiga. A lot of times, politicians, or almost all politicians, belong to one church or the other. I belong to the African Brotherhood Church. But you find me in the Catholic Church, you find me in Salvation Army, you find me in almost all other churches. Why? Because I get invitations by the church leaders to go to these churches. And most times it's because of Harambes. And look,
I was going to ask the intention of those invitations.
Yes,
what do you feel?
Because I'm not a Catholic, but I'll be invited to the Catholic Church. Because most times there'll be something that they need done, and they believe that a political leader is likely to contribute because you want to create a positive image. So you're likely to contribute more. In fact, if you're in a Harambe, most times a political leader, the highest office holder, wants to give the most. There could be business people. If you go to a Harambe and a businessman gives $500,000, then you are hard-pressed to ensure you give more than that. I mean, it's a tragedy. But let me tell you, Wahiga, watch this.
And what do you do if you don't have it?
Well, then you avoid going to those churches.
Keep going. Sorry, keep going, yes.
But let me tell you what will happen. Watch this space. This is, we are just about a year to the next election. The heightened activities of Harambes in churches, I mean, it will go up. there will be constant. There are churches that will do a Harambee every month. Some will do every 2 months. But there's no church that will not do a Harambee between now and the election. And when they do those Harambees, they will invite all political leaders, all people, the people who are vying for MCA, MP, women rep, senator, governor. All those people will be invited. So clearly, when people are invited so that they can contribute to the development of the church, why would you then deny them an opportunity to speak? If I go to my church, to the African Brotherhood Church, I will sit there and probably the presiding officer will just recognize that I have come in if I sit somewhere where I can be seen. But I don't have to speak because I have other opportunities and places where I can meet the people and have these discussions. So I think the church is right, but then they must give the right example. Let them stop inviting politicians. And let me say this, Waiga, finally, that even funerals are really church services. And you know, that's one thing many people forget, that actually a funeral service is a service and is conducted by the church depending on the church that the bereaved the family went to. So clearly, even in funerals, politicians speaking is really the same as, because it's sacred just like a church.
But don't you see the grief of the bereaved as a reason why a church leader, a politician should avoid...
No, you see, the thing is, if they talk about discouraging politicians from talking in church, I'm just saying that even a funeral service is a church. So that means that therefore, even in those funeral services, they should discourage political leaders also from making their comments. So I think it's a very difficult thing. Watch this space; it will continue up to 2022. Politicians every weekend. Watch on Monday the news. There will be politicians in almost every church in Kenya issuing statements.
My goodness, Dr. Alfred Mutua. Even as we still have one more topic, but I'm sure you have a comment on this one. The bishops are worried about a push to change the election date. Now, for a sitting politician, I don't know whether that's a bad thing or a good thing, but let me get your thoughts on that.
It cuts both ways. The main reason, it's good to be logical here. Why would there be a change in the date? The Constitution is very clear. The election should be held on the second Tuesday of August. So if there's going to be a change, then it has to be a change necessitated by something. It shouldn't just be a change to retain some of us in office for longer than it should be. But also, we have to realize that no law is fixed. Law can be amended to fit circumstances. So it has to be, the circumstances have to say, yes, push the elections. But it should not be pushed for the whims of giving somebody more time to gain ground, etc., etc. So I support the Catholic bishops that let's have elections on the set date, but it should not be, we shouldn't just say let's have it there when it's impossible to have it at that time. There's a question about IEBC, and I saw the story about IEBC. Will IEBC really be ready for us to have a fair and free elections? You see, for me, that is critical. You can have elections and say we must have elections on the second Tuesday of August 2022. And then it's elections that are shambles, and then things go haywire. Or can we say, okay, do we need to push the elections for another 6 months or 1 year so we can have good, clean elections? But then that would be a decision that is made by the people of Kenya. It shouldn't just be by a few people. Because also you don't want to abuse the system. Why isn't IEBC ready? Why can't Parliament give them enough money, to be able to do their work without them waiting until last minute? So it has its merits and demerits depending on the circumstances. So that's a question we need to look at, and it's a discussion we need to have maybe at the beginning of this year in January and see where are we, and then decide should we push the elections or not. My position is let's have them on August 2022, but we need to have free and fair elections that are conducted properly. We are tired of recycling the same people, my brother. The same people. Recycled. People are confused last minute, all these things, because people don't get enough time to have good leaders, and because the system is rigged to push in the same people instead of bringing in new and fresh blood, like the two of us here.
Wahiga, was it my turn?
Yes, it was. You're coming right on cue.
Yeah, and I will be very brief. Can you allow me first to confirm to Wakili that I'll give him immunity when I nominate him to hold office. So he doesn't have to worry about being fired.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I think you'll first have to also decide on which side of of the two principles you want to be in, because you made a very good point earlier when we started, that the question of political patronage will not work when it comes to appointments. Now, when you seem to defend hardliners and say that they're just doing their work as strategists, then you are going back on your word that it is the principle of proper merit and qualification that allows somebody to sit somewhere. So I think you need to exit that point to still qualify for my offer. if you don't, then... But I think more important, Wahiga, is that on the question of, what kind of mindset do you expect the president to have at this time? And the people around him who also want to run, including the deputy president, including Baba and Mudavadi, and Kalonzo Musyoka, and any other. I think, one, my mind is clear that the president's mind must be firmly fixed on the kind of legacy and why he will leave this country. He can't deviate from that. Because if he did, then where would we be, and what would we, in the first place, account and say it was worth for all that we did? So that one he can't lose his sights on. For the others, including the deputy president, including Raila Odinga, what we would just wish for all of them, Wahiga, is that they be given the best and the flattest course, for them to run equally, if possible, and the best man wins. That would be the most that would wish for them. And then that we would have a good country. But otherwise, all these other presuppositions that if we did this for this or these ones for that one, I think we would be losing it. I don't want to go into detail because I know we are short of time on that. But I think finally, on the last two issues, on this question of, as Mheshimiwa says, that politicians will still troop into church as from Monday. I think it is important for churches to stand their ground this time. And I'll be very disappointed if they don't. Because, we must make a statement also to ourselves as political leaders that there has to be a sense of discipline in whatever we are doing. I mean, there is no way we can ignore, Wahiga, that 2007 happened because of politicians. We can't ignore that fact. And once we made it happen, we even went to churches to follow those people. Can you remember, Wahiga, that the people who were killed that time, the ones who were displaced, went to seek refuge in churches all over this country? I was one of those people who were going to go feeding those people in churches in Limuru and other places. We even followed them in churches. And this happens all the time. Look at the genocide in Rwanda, Wahiga. I mean, people were massacred in churches. Because this is the place where people know how they would go and hide. It happened to us here. I mean, the Kiamba tragedy. Mm-hmm. And so we can't just talk about this like it's just casual. I think it is time to call politicians to order and ensure that window is no longer open to irresponsible people, and it has to be shut for the time being until such a time when there is a fair compromise and a proper raised pedestal whereby one knows that to climb up to it and stand on it and speak, you can only do so because you measure up. And if that doesn't happen, then so be it. Go speak from your village, form your own barazas, and look for funerals then that are conducted by village elders. If the funeral service is a church service, so be it that politicians don't speak there. I speak about that very strongly because I have seen victims and the kind of things they suffer. I lived in Kericho for a long time, by the way, Wahiga. I lived in Molo for a long time in Elbagon. I saw men walking at night with arrows stuck in their backs to hospital. I remember one morning driving and on a hill called Chepsion, seeing the head of a child severed and put on top of a stick by the roadside.
Those have
as co-chairs.
yes.
I mean, so once you've seen those kind of images, there's no way you would want to entertain that kind of thing when you're heading to an election. We have to make sure that anybody who doesn't comply is held to account. On the question of changing the elections date, I think we need to stick to what we have said. As a country, we have a law, we have a supreme law that we must respect, and we have to stick to those dates. Let's go to the elections. Let there be a decision. Let there be transition. And I want to say this morning loudly and clearly, Wahiga, that the legacy that was set by President Moi, when everybody thought that at that time he had every reason and all the power he needed and advantage to want to refuse at that time to hand over power and say that this can happen and we respect the Constitution, he surprised many. And that legacy must be upheld. That legacy must be maintained, that we are a country that is different, that we respect the law. If we say the elections are going to be on that date, unless it is completely impossible as provided for in the Constitution, then we would say for this reason and that reason, and as long as it is Constitution, then it will be. But the first and top priority must be to do what the law requires, and going to the election at that time would be the best thing. The question is, IEBC themselves, what are they doing? Because Wahiga, when you invite them here, tell them to put the house in order. They cannot, again, lead us to the abyss the way they did. All the way, remember from 2002, the chaos we had in KICC, all the way up to 2007, and then now, here we are looking at them, and they are telling us they have not acquired the systems for conducting an election. They have not adequately registered voters. That was one of the contestations during the BBI cases, and they need to come out and you know, say to our people and indeed convince us. As the bishops told them yesterday, and I understand the bishops when they say that the three should not leave at that time, I know they fear having a vacuum in IEBC. And we know that these ones have the institutional memory, that they would help the others catch up. The question would be then, even if we don't allow them to leave, are they going to add the value that is relevant? Because if they are going to have the institutional memory of corruption and failing, then they would rather be out. I would rather have them in, but in doing the right thing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Danstan Omari, come in here and tell us, those who would wish to change the election date. I mean, surely the law is very clear on that. But in many ways, and Dr. Alfred Mutua has alluded to the possibility of other circumstances. Just as a legal mind, just help us understand, for anyone thinking such thoughts, are there even any options?
There are options. The Constitution provides on legal reasons or constitutional parameters to push an election. One, there must be a state of emergency. That state of emergency must have been declared, went to Parliament, approved that there is a state of emergency. The election can only be postponed to a maximum of 6 months if there is a state of emergency. COVID is not a state of emergency. It is a state of war. So, as we are, Kenyans, forget about the question of whether you can push an election date from the second Tuesday of August 2022. It is cast on stone. Two, the question about the IEBC as being the reason to push a date of election is not known in law. It is a foreign concept. It is something that nobody can entertain. No judge can entertain. Not even my students of law in Catholic University who are in first year will entertain that. They'll just tell you, read this, and that is final. Third, on the question of the composition of IEBC, and my good next president, Chief Whip, who wants to appoint me either to be his legal advisor
yes, I think
as the AG, I will tell him very expressly that the composition of IEBC is independent outside the political class. It is independent outside the judicial, outside the churches. The question of how IEBC performs has been a political discussion. And I hope one of the very prominent presidential candidates will learn to accept that the decision once given by the IBC, any discomfort with that decision, you go to court. I have said the lawyers for former Cabinet Secretary Wario, you have not seen them demand that magistrate to be sacked or to be removed from office. They have said, we are preparing our documents to the High Court. So let us agree that once the IEBC declares Wamatangi or Governor Mutua as the president, if the hardliner in court, who is a good defender, is dissatisfied, he can only go to the High Court. If it is a presidential decision, let them go to the Supreme Court. And the decision of the Supreme Court is final. The question of my good hardliner walking around swearing himself that now I'm the people's president, that is the reason Kenyans are advising Kenyans to be alert that the organs that we have put under the Constitution, once they have made their decision, whether you are aggrieved, take Mother Karua, Honorable Mother Karua's position. The Supreme Court rejected her position. She went to the East African Court of Justice. She got justice there. Let us be a country that respects institutions. Let us be a country agreeing that I put up the best fight. I have lost. Let us not focus on the referee for God's case. And let us not be raising substantial issues about the IBC on the media. Let them do their job. Let us criticize them with a view of strengthening them. But for the political class, fund the IBC. Fund the IBC. Don't ask what they are doing when we have not oiled their machine on how to work.
Okay.
On the last question about the violence of the post-election violence of 2007, I want to tell Kenyans, I don't see any chance of violence, political violence in this election. The reasons are, in 2007, we were having a constitution that never created independent organs. We have now a new constitution that mandates the Inspector General, who is watching, that the security of this nation is squarely on your shoulders. We have organs mandated to ensure the Cohesion Commission and others. If you are taking directions from the executive, because those independent organs have failed Kenyans because they are asking my next president, Governor Mutua, what do you think should I do? Should I arrest Wahiga because he has inflamed tribal sentiments? No, that is on my political side. Leave it. Arrest this hardliner from this other side. All those people will be arrested.
Briefly.
They will be charged for failure to do what their job description is. So I'm appealing to everybody who has aspired, those 4 commissioners who took office at IBC, that if you don't want to be arrested and be charged for failure to do your job, do the job the way the law provides. This country is going to be very
That's some strong free legal advice. I believe they are watching. Honorable Mbui, fund the IBC is the message from many of the guests here this evening. Has Parliament done enough? Can it do more? Do we have time?
Yeah, of course, there's already we've passed the budgets, but the election, if it's in 2022, then it means that we still have another budget to consider.
You have said if
it's in 2022, because I mean the discussion is there. You brought the topic.
Okay.
That means
maybe okay. I thought you might have.
But I support the election to be on the scheduled date in the Constitution, because I think we need to respect our Constitution. But just like the governor said, clearly there could be some circumstances. I mean, you say that COVID is not a problem, but what if COVID is really ravages this country to a point where it's beyond people getting out of their houses? Will we insist that we still do an election when people cannot go to the polling station? So I think there could be reason, but I support the election date not to be touched. Now, on the issue of IBC and it's how they handle the elections, excuse me, I think we've had even leaders of, you remember the previous commission was ECK. ECK's leader at one time, actually himself on national TV, said that, you know, that the results are being cooked. And this means that there's been problems in managing of elections. And that led to the fight that you saw. And clearly, I think Kenya's economy is very dependent on what happens on election date. That's why you find the private sector told us that when elections are being held, a year or two before the elections, people stop investing in Kenya. Then after elections, when the results are disputed, another year goes by when we're in the streets. So Kenya only develops for like 2 years. And really, that's a tragedy. So IEBC needs to put their house in order, because it's not just about the money. Because those 2 last elections and even 3 last elections, it wasn't that they didn't have enough money. They had the resources, but they bungled the whole thing. And that's why the Supreme Court said these elections were not, you know, credible.
Okay, and I think on this note, I want to take tweets and then we get final comments from my guests. We actually passed time, so let's quickly see what Kenyans are saying. I know you've been asking that we read that feedback. Jacob Awere, let me see, okay. It's an awakening moment that religious institutions need to come up with one voice and accord either the Methodists, the SDA, Islam, Dini Msambo and others to come up and say no to pulpit politics or turn away their dirty offerings. My goodness, okay. Reina Samo, how come this human nature that Omar is talking of doesn't apply to chicken thieves who are sent straight to jail? This jurisprudence only applies to big fish because they can afford lawyers who frustrate cases. Okay. Engineer Lazaro, Catholic clergy should first of all lead Kenyans in questioning how some of those senior government officials acquire imminent or a lot of wealth after a very short duration. Corruption being adopted as part of wealth creation in this country. That's an interesting point. Abdirahman Ali 40, you say corruption doesn't invest in the future, it kills the future. What does it take years to convict a suspect? The Hassan Wario case should have been closed like 2016. We've even forgotten there was a case here. Big burden to Kenyans, tax and corruption. Okay, one last one. Don Sabo, you said the church is telling Kenyans we must go ahead with the election even when the IEBC is not ready to deliver. Have an environment conducive for any political activity. Let's face the pandemic, reduce fuel prices, make the economy. Okay, I want to get 1 minute parting shots from each of my guests, and I'll switch direction. I'll start with Honorable Mbui to get his final thought as he tells us how the residents and voters in Kathiani are going to deal with this fuel price hike. As your parting shot. Yeah,
thank you. I was against the introduction of VAT on fuel. It's on record in National Assembly. And I think it's a tragedy what Kenyans are going through. Something needs to be done. I know we have some reserves of fuel. The government needs to put its house in order and ensure that this fuel is mined so that we can have enough fuel and the prices we stop importing too much and we reduce our prices.
It's not Parliament to reduce our taxes by legislation. Some are saying it's your house.
I made, excuse me, I already declared that I voted against it. So.
Okay, okay. So you did your part. We take that as your last word on this. Danstan Omari, what's your last word? And of course, Kenyans are crying this morning, and we are told another tax is on the way.
Let me tell you,
1st of October.
Kenyans me included and everybody included. I've seen a lot of comments. People are even getting when the Jubilee government, the chief whip is here. When it came to power, fuel was 67 shillings per litre. Now it's 134. Another tax is coming. The question has been, don't blame the government. Don't blame the government. When you elect such people to be your government officials, don't expect anything from them. In 2022, you have the card. Elect somebody responsive to you. We have a problem in this country where we elect the most unfit people to form government and we expect them to provide results. Corporate governance...
I don't know what Wamatangi feels. Ruling parties here.
They'll differ with me. None of Wanjiku sits in parliament. None of Wanjiku approves budgets. None of Wanjiku runs policies of government. That is why I'm advising them that we have another chance in the next 1 year to put in place a government that is going to get policies that are right.
Okay.
But for now, from all the parties I've seen, none of them is responsive to the needs of this country.
Even the gentleman sitting next to you.
None of them,
Okay,
even the
you've even
political
repeated
formations.
it. Yes. Thank you, Wakili. Senator Matangi,
Yes, I think...
scathing indictment of Jubilee Party's performance.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick part. In short, first, let me say to the AG coming that...
And you might talk like that and it comes.
Well, I'll make you AG. But I told you there are a few things you have to change. but let's agree. One, I think, Wahiga, the reason why IEBC and politicians may be inseparable is because by dint of law, the functions of IEBC impact directly on the politics of this country. They are mandated to deliver election results.
Okay.
So the interest of politicians must imply and apply, and hence you find it's very difficult to have politicians keep quiet about IEBC, including the other functions like delineation of boundaries, which has even economic implications. You know, when they've failed to subdivide sub-counties in my county in Kiambu, like Ruiru and Thika and others, where our people continue then to suffer because we have sub-counties that have the population of equal more than other 4 sub-counties, then politicians must speak about IEBC. So I think it is important for IEBC to be on notice that we as politicians will be watching their every move, that they have to ensure that they put the house in order, do what they have to do, delineate boundaries, give us a solution if they are not able to do that, and ensure that they deliver credible election results. And then lastly is on this question of fuel prices that has been spoken about by the whole country. And Wahiga, I can only sum it up in a few words. One is that the suffering is real. It is real, and there is no hiding away from that fact. What we need to be asking ourselves amidst this suffering, if you ask me, are 2 questions. First is that okay, we know from general platitude what affects the prices of oils. You know, the geopolitics of it, the supply and demand of oil, and then taxation. Those probably are the main components that affect the oil prices. But the main point is this: governments and responsible jurisdictions that have taken measures in delivering their people from the kind of malady we are having. And I can use a good case in point if we have time. Look at a case like Norway. Norway has got the most vast reserves and easy access to oil. But what they've done is they have consistently driven their people away from that dependence. If you go to Norway or those Scandinavian countries, you find 50% of the population cycles to work on bicycles comfortably, and they have no problem. If you look at their rapid mass transport systems, they will not have to worry that there will be traffic jams because everybody wants to drive themselves to hospital. They've come up with ingenious solutions. If you look at countries like Finland, which have got simple, also easy access, they have capitalized on renewable energy, like windmills and so on, which we could start consistently driving our people to, so that we can comfortably say that we are taking our people gradually away from this kind of pain, because it is likely to continue as long as you have OPEC in place and there are a cartel that will one day say tomorrow we want this kind of profit.
Yes.
Then you cannot fully insulate people from that kind of problem.
Okay.
Can we have policy that will be
Finally,
saying will secure our people for the future, so that you don't have to negotiate this kind of thing? And let's also look finally at, we had oil reserves in Turkana that we didn't fully exploit.
Yes.
Are we able to do something to ensure that we are not necessarily fully dependent?
Okay.
Can we do other things? And because it's a long subject anyway, I don't want to go into it past that. Thank you. Have a good morning. Next week when we come, let's have a better conversation on this, because this is a subject that would have tackled very, very well. The things we would have said, that I think would be of use and help to the country and those that make policy and lead this industry, so that we can transform this country. I
make it a top topic for next week.
I believe we need to have a word on it.
Dr. Mutua, you have the last word on this. How do you want to wrap this up for us?
Yes, I want to say first that I'm confounded by how we think alike, because I'm looking at my notes here. I've written about Norway, I've written about Turkana oil, I've written about all the things that he's spoken about, so I don't repeat myself. Very quick, about 4 points as I close in a chap-chap manner. Someone once said that it is not the one who casts the vote that counts, but rather the one who counts the cast vote. And this is what we're talking about when you talk about IEBC and the elections coming in. We need an aspect where Kenyans feel that they need to be free. Somebody said that freedom is the right to act or speak or think the way you want. But your freedom can be constrained if your environment does not allow you to exercise freedom, when you are hardened through systems and other things. So we need to protect the freedom of our people from government, from others that push down on them, but it needs to be exercised in an environment that really supports freedom. And freedom to be able to cast your vote and know that you go to sleep and your vote will count is very important. So when you just talk about moving the date and everything, it's critical that we have and able to exercise that freedom that we've been given. The second point is about the state of the economy. These oil prices is an indictment, just shows how the economy is doing. And we need to look at what about the gold reserves in Shamaho? What about increasing and removing the bureaucracy that we have so that we have more PPPs, so that the money that is going to infrastructure in counties, in sub-counties, can actually go into other aspects to reduce the burden that Kenyans have to pay all the time. Let's use other people's money. Number 3 is about churches. And let me be a bit brutal here, you know, and let me not be controversial, lakini kunaweza kuwa pia na umalaya wa makanisa. So uko kanisa fulani, lakini wewe unasema ni Mkatoliki, unaenda pale unasema tumsifu Yesu Kristo, lakini uko kwa kila kanisa just because you are a Christian. So are you going there for sure? Honorable Mbuya amesema yuko African.
I don't know how you use those two words in the same sentence, Dr. Mutua, but finish up. We are wrapping up.
African Brotherhood Church, which my grandfather was a pastor in the African Brotherhood Church, beautiful church, you know. You go to church, but you cannot be in 52 weeks, you are in very, very many different churches. Let's emulate the likes of Mwai Kibaki. Mwai Kibaki will go down in history as one of the best leaders we ever had in this country in terms of economics. Did you see Mwai Kibaki in different churches? Kibaki went to his church, the Catholic Church, mostly in Consolata. Hata today, anaenanga kanisa yake, anao Mwenyezi Mungu. Yeye apeleki mambo ya siasa kuonekana kwa kanisa. Unaona? So politicians should not be saying ati lazima uonekane kwa makanisa tofauti ndio ukue kiongozi. Hao wanaonekana kwa makanisa tofauti ndio viongozi wale wabaya kabisa.
Okay.
And let's work with the church, and I like what you're doing in terms of working with the church. And finally it says that we come here, we complain a lot about our country. I always like to part by saying we live in a great country. Kenya may have its challenges, we have unemployment, we have our challenges, but we are a great country. And the way to fix this country is to believe in Kenya and to believe that the solutions to the problems lie in us. They don't lie from outsiders. So as we think about casting the vote, as Wakili has said, as we think about the future leaders of this country, as we think about a generational change, let us know that whoever we put into office will determine how our livelihoods will be. So we need to think and know that the hope of this country lies in our hands. So we encourage, especially the young people now, it is our time now to take over this country.
Thank you.
And we take it over by knowing that we come from a great country. And thank you very much.
And that's why I gave Dr. Alfred Mutua the final word. At least he has given us something positive to think about after everything that we have discussed this morning. Thank you so much to each of my guests. We've had Honorable Robert Mbui, MP, Kathiani. Today, because of a headline in The Nation, he has been given a different name, topic for another day. We have had Danstan Omari, Advocate of the High Court. Thank you for your time this morning. Senator Kimani Wamatangi, asante sana. And of course, Dr. Alfred Mutua, the Governor of Machakos County. Thank you to each of my guests. We have this State of the Nation discussion every Thursday right here on Daybreak. And next week, we'll have another one. And the state of the economy, as has been a motion that has been moved by the good senator, will be a big topic for discussion that day. But for now, let's take a break. When we come back, I believe there's some cooking that will be going on. We'll cross over to our other studio for that. Keep it Citizen TV.